Hi guys, good morning. Hope all of you are doing good. So we have done one class on revision of concepts of Forex, and this is class number 2. So if you remember, the last point of our discussion in the first class was about the arbitrage opportunities that can be made in the currency market. Now we continue with that discussion. If you remember, I introduced 3 different types of people in the market, especially when we are talking about Forex and derivatives chapters. There are 3 important participants in the market. We have hedgers. Hedgers have existing risk exposure. Speculators, they don't have risk exposure, but they have a belief about the asset going up in value or asset going down in value. They can bet on currency, they can bet on stocks, they can bet on bonds, they can bet on interest rates. It can be any asset class. And then we have arbitragers who are looking for opportunities only where they can make riskless profits, and obviously that is possible only when there is mispricing in the market. This is the discussion, the last point of our discussion that we have done. Now coming to the main part of our discussion, which is covered in both the Forex and derivatives chapter, is to talk about hedging. Now right now we are interested in knowing how to do hedging of currency risk, currency fluctuation risk. And when I say currency fluctuation risk, we are mainly talking about the transaction exposure. We are talking about the transaction exposure. If you remember, in my last class I told you it is the transaction exposure which deals with 99% of the sums in your curriculum. So transaction exposure is a situation where we know how much is the foreign currency payable or receivable, but because the amount is payable or receivable on a future date, we don't know how much we will get on conversion in home currency terms. We don't know how much equivalent will be in the home currency terms when we are going to convert it on a future date, because we don't know what currency quotations will be prevailing in the market. So there are different types of strategies which can be used for hedging against the currency fluctuation risk. And if you remember the broad list, now I can tell you the broad list. We started with forward contracts. If you remember, guys, we started with forward contracts, then we moved on to money market cover. If you remember, 3 steps were there in money market cover. We have done a strategy known as netting, which is a very simple strategy. We can go for home currency invoicing. Here and there we have seen application of this in a couple of sums, home currency invoicing. If you go for home currency invoicing, then at least you are not exposed to transaction exposure. It is then the exposure of the other entity who is involved in the transaction. Then we have done currency futures, and we have done currency options. These are the primary hedging strategies as far as currency fluctuation risk is concerned. Small strategies like leading and lagging, centralized versus decentralized cash management, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the main strategies for which practicals can come in exam. Forward cover, money market cover, netting, home currency invoicing, currency futures, currency options. These 2 obviously I can't discuss right now because they relate to derivatives. Till the time I don't teach you futures options, I can't do them. So we did it in derivatives, if you remember. So the main focus was for these 4 strategies, starting with forward cover, then money market cover, then netting, and then home currency invoicing. Now if you remember this, the structure of the sums which generally come in exam is that they will ask you to compare between forward cover and money market cover, and some places they might introduce netting strategy also. And if you remember, the uniqueness of the netting strategy is that netting will not be specifically asked in exam. They may not use the word netting. It is the requirement for a student to think under what circumstances the netting strategy can be deployed by the organization. So if you remember, I gave you 2 conditions, 2 circumstances where by default you should use netting strategy. What are those 2 circumstances, guys? Number 1, same currency I should have payable and receivable. Same currency I should have payable and receivable. And number 2, we should have same maturity for payable and receivable. Only then netting has to be applied. In fact, if this is the scenario that we have same currency payable and receivable and they are to be settled on same maturity, then by default you will apply netting even if question is silent about it. I hope this is clear, guys. I am repeating myself. Same currency payable, receivable, same maturity. Even if question is silent, by default you have to apply netting strategy. Remember that exam problem has come where they have expected students to apply their own knowledge to apply netting strategy. Okay. So netting is done, guys. There is nothing great in netting. Next was invoicing, home currency invoicing. So the question can come like this, that company has, suppose it's an Indian company, and they will say Indian company has $40 lakhs receivable in 6 months time. So they are considering the different strategies for hedging against the risk. One strategy is home currency invoicing, and they will mention that they want you to find out what is the total amount in case of home currency invoicing using current exchange rate. They might say a language like this. So suppose if current exchange rate rupee per dollar is 69/70, this is the scenario, and you have to find out under home currency invoicing, what is the amount of settlement that you are anticipating. So in this case, guys, you need to think from the other entity's perspective, because it is the other entity who is basically the US entity who is going to sell dollar and buy rupee for making payment, because you are going to do settlement in rupee terms, not in dollar terms. So you are going to think from US entity's perspective, not from Indian entity's perspective, because Indian entity will be getting the bill in rupee. So Indian entity will not go to the currency market. It is the US entity which has to go to the currency market. And think about the base currency. Base currency is dollar. What is US entity going to do with dollar? US entity will sell dollar, and if they are going to sell dollar, so obviously they will sell dollar at 69. So they will sell dollar at 69, and they will find out how much rupee equivalent amount they are ending up paying. That is what we will be required to find out. So obviously in this case, from dollar I am converting into rupee because dollar amount is given. So obviously in this case the answer is 40 lakhs into 69. That is the answer for home currency equivalent. Okay, this is the home currency invoicing. This is how you calculate the home currency equivalent amount. Okay, so I'm repeating myself. You have $40 lakhs receivable in 6 months time. Obviously you are exposed to currency fluctuation risk, and you're worried about dollar going down. Dollar is receivable. Receivable is an asset. You are worried about asset going down. So in this case, you will be thinking from US entity's perspective that US entity has dollar in their hand. They will sell dollar, buy rupee, because their responsibility is to pay me in rupee terms. So they will sell dollar and buy rupee. If they're going to sell dollar, they will sell at a bid rate. We always sell at lower rate, so they will sell at bid rate. So 40 lakhs into 69. Why did we multiply? Because we are going from base currency to price currency, so that is why they will multiply. So 40 lakhs into 69 is rupee equivalent invoice amount if we go for home currency invoicing. I hope the second strategy is also clear, guys. Now let's start with the forward cover discussion. The forward contracts, if you remember, I told you, is the simplest strategy for hedging. What we do, we go to the bank and we take a forward contract, just like the way spot rates are available. Let's say spot rate of rupee per dollar is 70, and 3 months forward rupee per dollar is 71.25. What does that mean? That means today both spot rate and forward rates are available, but spot rate is for immediate settlement, whereas forward rate is for settlement on a future date. How much is the settlement period? That will be given in the quotation. Like in this case, it is mentioned it is a 3 months forward contract, and rupee per dollar is 71.25. I hope this is clear, which means today itself I can go to the bank and I can book a forward contract where I will be getting every dollar for 71.25. After 3 months, you go to the bank, and whatever is the specified currency amount, that much you can get at 71.25. Now, how are forward rates determined? Forward rates are also determined by demand and supply forces. And anything special about forward contracts? The best thing about forward contracts is that in case of forward contracts, the best part about the contracts is that they are customized contracts. Guys, I hope you remember this. This was the most important point of our discussion. Forward contracts are OTC, over the counter instruments, and the best part about forward contracts is they are customized. When I told you, when we talk about customization, we are talking about two important aspects. One is the quantity. You can take the contract for any amount of currency. Quantity is not defined. There are no lot sizes. You decide how much currency you want to trade in, how much currency you want to hedge. And second is the duration, the maturity. There is no standard maturity, unlike futures. Guys, you remember futures and options come in maturity of 1 month, 2 months and 3 months. Here it is not like that. Here the duration is not specified. You can take a contract for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, and in some situations you can even talk to the bank and take a contract for 12 months. These are the two beautiful aspects of forward contracts, because the quantity is not predefined, duration is not predefined, it is customized. When I say customized, it means the contracts are designed according to customer specification. And as far as the exchange traded instruments are concerned, when I say exchange traded instruments, I hope you remember the three we studied: futures, options, cap, floor, collar. These are exchange traded instruments, and in this case everything is predefined. It is not customer specific, it is standardized for everybody. I hope this is fine, guys. Now when you take a forward contract, you remember this, that I told you that in case of a forward contract, apart from 71.25, you might be required to pay some upfront processing fee. If you are paying some upfront processing fee, then that 71.25 into, let's say, 1% I am paying, so that 1% will be calculated of 71.25. whatever that amount is, that needs to be paid up front. Obviously, if that amount, whatever you calculate, so let's say that amount is 0.7 in this case, so 0.7 is the upfront processing fee. Obviously this is over and above 71.25, so this 0.7 will be added to 71.25. I hope you remember that this 0.7 is an outflow which will be added to 71.25. If you are an importer and you are buying dollar at this rate, buying dollar at 71.25, then obviously in your buying cost 0.7 will add. If you are an exporter and you are selling dollar at 71.25, then from selling rate your 0.7 cost will be reduced. You need to understand cost plus cost, income minus cost. These are the two things you have to remember. If 71.25 is my cost, then in 71.25, 0.7 will also add, cost plus cost. But if 71.25 is my income, because that is the rate at which I am going to sell my dollar, then it is an income for me. From income, cost will be reduced. That is, then in that case you will reduce 0.7. Very, very important thing I told you after this was that, remember one thing, guys, when you have 71.25 and you pay upfront processing fee of 0.7, look for the cost of funds in the sum. If they have given cost of funds in the sum, then you need to consider opportunity cost or the interest cost on this 0.7. How do you do that? In that case, 0.7 into 10% into 3 by 12. Suppose the 10% is the cost of money given in the market, then 0.7 into 10% into 3 by 12. Today I am paying 0.7 from my pocket. Because of that, I am going to suffer a cost of 10% on that. Interest cost means I am assuming that this money has been borrowed by me and I am paying it out, and that on that borrowing I am paying interest. Opportunity cost means this 0.7, because I am paying to the banker in respect of a forward contract, this money cannot be used by me anywhere else. So there is an opportunity cost associated with this. Whether you want to call it as opportunity cost or you want to call it as interest cost does not matter. That you need to consider right now is that you need to consider the total interest on this 0.7 for the period of forward contract, which in our example is 3 months. So if I'm talking from importer's point of view, then this is my final cost, 71.25 plus 0.7 plus, let's say this comes to 0.10, this comes to 0.10. Don't please start calculating on your calculator, you will be going crazy, because these numbers are hypothetical numbers I am assuming, because we are focusing on understanding of concepts. Please don't start solving them. So 71.25 plus 0.7 plus 0.10, that becomes my effective cost under the forward cover. And if it's an exporter, then what will happen? So then in that case 71.25 is my income, and this will become minus, this will become minus, because for from my income my cost will be reduced. So we find out the effective forward rate by considering the processing fee paid plus the interest on that processing fee, because this processing fee is generally payable upfront, and because of that we consider the opportunity cost on that money. Okay, once you calculate the effective forward rate, guys, I hope you remember that in respect of forward rate there are 4 different rates which are relevant. One is the spot rate. This is on date of transaction. Second is the expected spot rate. You remember expected spot rate? Okay, let me first write forward rate, what you have already understood. Forward rate, this is applicable on date of maturity. Then what did we study? we studied expected spot rate. I hope you remember, guys. Expected spot rate is the rate which we calculate internally. Generally this rate is given to you in exams. They might also do one thing, they can give you a probability distribution, and if they give you a probability distribution, then in that case we calculate it as summation px. I hope you remember this. I told you, wherever in entire SFM, wherever they give you probabilities, remember 99% chances are that you will end up using this particular formula, which is summation px. That is probabilities multiplied with expected value. Probabilities multiplied with expected value. What is this expected spot rate used for? Wait, I'll tell you. And last rate is spot rate. This is on date of settlement. We discussed 4 total rates, guys. Spot rate, date of transaction, forward rate, applicable on date of transaction, but it is available on the date of transaction. It's applicable on date of maturity, but available on the date of transaction. Third is expected spot rate, what we anticipate is going to prevail on the maturity. And last is spot rate on the date of settlement. This is obviously available only on the date of settlement, right? So these rates are useful for doing 2 types of analysis. If you remember, in respect of forward cover, we can be tested 2 different types of analysis. Number 1 is called as post facto analysis. I hope you remember that, guys. The number 1 analysis is post facto analysis. Post means after. So this is backward looking. If you remember, post facto analysis, we need to tell whether company benefited by taking a forward cover or not. That is the type of analysis. Post facto analysis, what we do, guys, is that we take the rate at which we have taken the forward rate and the spot rate on the date of maturity. We compare the 2 rates and we tell whether company benefited by taking a forward cover or they did not benefit by taking a forward cover. This is backward looking analysis, right? This is backward looking. This is backward looking. They will ask you, did company benefit by taking a forward cover? So you compare the rate at which you have taken a forward rate and the spot rate on the date of settlement. Now spot rate on the date of settlement will be given to you. Forward rate, as I explained here, you will have to calculate the forward rate and compare the 2 and tell whether company benefited by taking a forward cover or not. I hope you remember this, guys. I told you, analysis whether you benefited by taking a forward cover or not is actually useless from practical perspective, because it does not even matter, because people don't take forward cover for making profit out of it. People take forward cover for protection, and as far as protection is concerned, that anyways we are getting once we have taken a forward cover, because once you take a forward cover, guys, you know the rate at which you are going to do settlement. And that is the beauty of forward cover, that once you take a forward cover, anxiety is over in your life, because you know exactly the rate at which you are going to do the settlement. So it does not even matter by comparing the rates on the maturity whether we benefited or not. But in exam, yes, they can ask you to do post facto analysis of forward cover. Okay, second type of analysis, if you remember, is ex ante analysis of forward cover. Now ex ante analysis of forward cover is forward looking, where they ask you questions like this: should company hedge using a forward cover? That is the kind of analysis. If you remember, I told you in ex ante analysis there are 2 types of sums, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is where spot rate on date of transaction is not given, and second category was spot rate on date of transaction is given. If you open your book and see, this is the 2 types I have told you. The first category is a simple category, guys. Spot rate on the date of transaction is not given. This is very simple. What we do is we compare the expected spot rate and the forward rate. We simply compare the expected spot rate and the forward rate to decide whether or not forward cover should be taken. Like for example, suppose you have dollar receivable and forward rate, 3 months forward rate available is 74. After all the adjustments, effective rate is 74. Suppose 74 rupees per dollar. You have dollar receivable, okay, and expected spot rate, which is normally summation px, is 73.25. So if you do the analysis, they will ask you whether or not a forward cover should be taken. If you remember this, we have discussed like this, that okay, in 3 months time I have dollar receivable, banker is quoting me 74, which means after 3 months I can take my dollar to the bank and get 74 for every dollar. Or alternatively, I can wait, keeping my position unhedged, open position, and then in that case I will get 73.25. So obviously in this case, if I do not hedge, then I expect that I will do settlement at 73.25. But if I hedge today, then after 3 months my rate is secured at 74. Obviously if I take a forward cover, I am going to get more. How much more you are going to get? 74 minus 73.25, which is 0.75. So obviously in this case it is better that we hedge. Okay, so this is how the comparison is done in case of type 1 sums. And type 2 is where spot rate on date of transaction is given. Guys, I hope you remember this. In this case, I told you we have to follow certain steps as given in the institute material. So first step is, step 1 is, what we do in step 1, we compare the, so first step is like forward cover is not taken. If forward cover is not taken, then what will happen? Then we compare the expected spot rate and the spot rate. If forward cover is not taken, then you will do the settlement at expected spot rate. So we compare the expected spot rate and spot rate, and we calculate the transaction loss or transaction profit. By comparing expected spot rate and spot rate, we find out the transaction loss or transaction profit. Suppose my transaction loss in this case is 2 lakh as compared to today. So what is the tone of thinking? What is the way of thinking? We think if I would have gone for immediate settlement, I would get 12 lakh rupees. If I go for settlement on a future date without hedging, I will get 10 lakh rupees. So 12 lakh minus 10 lakh, 2 lakh is my transaction loss. That transaction loss I have written. Then what is step 2, guys? Step 2 is, if forward cover is taken, if we take the forward cover, then what will happen? Then we will compare the forward rate and spot rate. If we compare the forward rate and spot rate, then what will happen? Forward rate is the rate at which we will take the forward contract, and spot rate is obviously the rate on the date of transaction. Suppose in this case also my transaction loss is 50,000. You still have a loss, but loss is only 50,000. If you compare the date on which transaction is done and with the forward date at which you can do the settlement under the forward cover, then when you see these two things, then you do the analysis by comparing step 1 and step 2. You say that if forward cover is not taken, loss will be 2 lakh. If forward cover is taken, loss will be 50,000. Obviously, by taking a forward cover, we can bring down the loss by 1,50,000. So what is the conclusion? Conclusion is that we recommend the company to take a forward cover, because by taking forward cover, we see that company can reduce its loss by 1,50,000. That is, its net loss is expected to be only 50,000 rupees. I hope, guys, this is clear to you. So these are the two types of analysis which they can ask as far as forward cover is concerned. Okay, so this was the total discussion on forward cover. Now I told you in exam generally forward cover will come in comparison with money market cover. Now if you remember, guys, money market cover, we have learned something like this. You have a payable or you have a receivable. So let's first talk about the payable, guys. For the payable, I told you like this. Payable is a, how do you remember this? Payable is a liability. Against the liability, we got to create an asset. Payable is a liability. Against the liability, we got to create an asset. For creating an asset, we need to invest. So the first thing we do is invest in the foreign country. We invest in the foreign country. How much we invest? We invest the present value of payable. Invest in foreign country, present value of payable. That's how we start. Payable is a liability. Against the liability, we create an asset. For creating an asset, what we need to do? We need to invest in foreign country. How much? The present value of payable you will invest. Okay, to make investment, this is your step 1, guys. To make investment, where what we need to do? We need to first buy the foreign currency. Buy the foreign currency spot. This is your step 2. We first need to buy the foreign currency in the spot market. And step 3 is to borrow the home currency. Invest in foreign country. For making investment, how much will you invest? The present value of my payables, that is what I will invest today. And then I will buy that much of foreign currency, and to buy that much foreign currency, we will first have to borrow the home currency. That is, we need to borrow in India. So think like this: if you have US dollars payable, you will borrow the home currency, borrow rupee, go to the currency market, buy dollars and invest dollars in US. So suppose if you have $1 lakh payable, so maybe depending on the interest rates, you will invest today $97,000 in US today. After 6 months, if you have a payable, in 6 months, this 97,000 along with interest will become 1 lakh. This $97,000 along with interest will become 1 lakh, and then this 1 lakh can be used to pay off your supplier in US. So what you need to do is invest today itself, so that whatever transactions are happening are happening in the spot market and not in the forward market. So in the spot market itself, you will buy the foreign currency. So by doing this strategy, what you ensure is that on a future date, you will not be required to go to the currency market. You will not be required to go to the currency market on a future date if you take up this strategy. So basically 3 steps are there in case of payable: invest, buy, borrow. Invest, buy, borrow. Now how do you remember that? Don't learn it, guys. It's very simple to remember. If I have a payable, think payable is a liability. Against a liability, we will have to create an asset so that my asset can take care of my liability. So how do you create an asset? By investing in the foreign country. Should you invest the entire amount of payable? No, the present value of the payables should be invested. To make that investment, first I need to buy the foreign currency today in the spot market, and to buy the foreign currency I need to borrow in my home currency. These are the steps, guys. Okay, I hope I'm not going fast and you are able to recall the concepts. Second was receivable. As far as receivables are concerned, so receivable is an asset. Against the asset we create a liability. A liability is created by going for a borrowing. Receivable is an asset. Against the asset we create a liability. To create a liability, we will borrow. Borrow what? Borrow the foreign currency. Obviously the present value will be borrowed. So basically in this case what happens is, you borrow the foreign currency today, and the next thing you do is, this is your step 1. Next thing you do is sell foreign currency in the spot market. That's the second thing you do. You sell the foreign currency in the spot market, and whatever home currency you get, home currency invested. That's a step 3. Home currency will be invested. So first step is that you borrow the foreign currency. Obviously you will borrow the present value of the foreign currency. So basically what happens, guys, if you have $1 lakh receivable, maybe you will borrow 98,000 today. You will borrow $98,000 today in US. That $98,000 will be brought to India and sold in the spot market. You will sell that in the spot market. On selling you will get rupee, and this rupee will then be invested in home currency. Okay, as far as this $98,000 is concerned, this $98,000 on maturity will be equivalent to $1 lakh. This $98,000 on maturity will be equivalent to $1 lakh. And then what happens is, I have a customer in US and I have a lender in US. Lender is the one from whom I got this money. So I will tell my customer after 3 months, 6 months, whatever is the period, I will tell my customer to directly settle with my lender. I will tell my customer to directly settle with my lender. Customer will be told to directly pay in the US. So basically for me, only transaction that happens is again in the spot market. So what are the 3 steps, guys? Step 1 is borrow, step 2 is sell, step 3 is invest. Borrow, sell, invest. It is exactly opposite of what we studied for payable, and payable was invest by borrow. So receivable is borrow, sell, invest. Okay, so the best way to remember this is by looking at the payable or receivable thing, whether you have an asset or you have a liability, and accordingly you start thinking, against an asset we create a liability, or against a liability we create an asset. Okay, so next thing is so basically we are done with the hedging strategies, guys. Yes, currency options and currency futures are left. That we will be discussing in the derivatives revision classes, not now. Okay, so apart from that, guys, this is where we started. We are done with forward cover, we are done with money market cover, we are done with netting, we are done with home currency invoicing. 2 small concepts before I proceed further. 2 small concepts that we discussed. If you remember, we discussed about annualized forward premium or discount. We discussed about annualized forward premium or discount. Annualized forward premium on base currency, if you remember, we just did it like this: F minus S by S into 100 into 12 by N. This is the formula we have done for annualized forward premium on base currency. And similarly, if you want annualized forward premium on price currency, then the formula is S minus F by F into 100 into 12 by N. These are the 2 formulas we have discussed in the class. They will not be tested directly. You never know, they may ask you for 3-4 marks, but chances are less. But this generally becomes part of interest rate parity theory, and they merge the concept with interest rate parity, and that is where I expect it will be tested. We will be discussing interest rate parity theory after this. So annualized forward premium on base currency is F minus S by S. Annualized forward premium on price currency is S minus F by F. If you remember, guys, I told you we always calculate the premium, and if the answer comes negative, then automatically it means that currency is at a discount. These are written in your notes. We always solve for premium, but if the answer comes in negative, then it means that the currency is at discount. Guys, I hope you remember this, that if one currency is at a premium, it automatically means the other currency will be at a discount. If one currency is at a premium, other currency is to be at a discount. For example, if rupee per dollar is 69 and 3 months forward rupee per dollar is 70, then obviously when we look at these two quotations, I will say that looking at the 3 months forward quotation, we understand dollar is at a forward premium, which also means rupee is at a forward discount. I hope this is clear. Now, one very important thing is, suppose if the quotation is given as rupee per dollar, where dollar is the base currency, and then if they tell you that dollar is at a discount of 6%, if they use this kind of a language, dollar is at a discount of 6%. So when you look at the quotation, guys, discount is already given, and then if you have to write the quotation, dollar is the base currency, so obviously this quotation is to be written F minus S by S into 100 into 12 by N is equal to 6%. Now because they have told you discount, so obviously I will write it as minus 6%. Quotation I have written based on dollar, which is a base currency, and for base currency the formula is F minus S by S. So that I have written, but because they are saying it is a discount, so formula for premium will be written, but because it's discount, so we have put a negative sign. And when you put the numbers, so you will simply take it like this, okay, because the percentage will be removed and 100 will be removed on this side. So this is what you will write, F minus S by S into 100 into 100 into 12 by N is equal to minus 6%, or when you start solving it, it is F minus S by S into 12 by N is equal to minus 6, and then you can solve it. So what you need to remember is, if they give you discount, then in that case you still write the formula of premium, but just put a negative sign for the value given. Okay, after that, one very crucial point that we discussed was about swap points. Guys, if you remember, I told you this is the most tricky part of your discussion, and swap points is basically the gap between spot rate and forward rate. So basically what happens is, guys, they give you the spot rate and then you make adjustment for swap points, and then you calculate the forward rate. I hope, guys, you remember this. Spot rates will be given, swap points will be given to you, and you have to make adjustment of swap points to calculate forward rate. So if you're lucky, forward rates will be given directly. If they want to test you on swap rates concept, then they will give you the swap points, and when they give you the swap points, then spot rates are adjusted for swap points to calculate the forward rate. Swap points are adjusted for swap points to calculate the forward rate. So basically, guys, in this case what happens is, when you make adjustment of swap points, I hope you remember there are certain rules that you have to keep in mind. Rule 1, 2, 3, 4. Total how many rules are there? Total 4 rules are there. If they specify the word premium, then swap points are added. If they specify the word discount, then swap points is subtracted. If they specify the swap points as low high, then swap points are added, and if they give you the swap points as high low, then swap points are subtracted. Obviously, I hope you remember this, that swap points adjustment should first priority be given to first and second rules. Rule number 1 and 2, that is, if the word premium is given, we always add. If the word discount is given, we always subtract. Low high low sequence is seen only when premium and discounts are not given. Only when premium and discounts are not given, that is when we consider the low high and the high low concept. Otherwise, we always go by the words premium and discount. Okay, I hope this part is clear to you. Now, when you are making the adjustment, if you remember, I made a very important point in class, that when you are making adjustment of swap points, do remember that swap points adjustment is to be done from extreme right hand side after the decimal points. After the decimal points, extreme right hand side adjustment is to be done. So what do you mean by that? Can you give us one example? Sure, anything for you guys. So rupee per dollar is 69.20 and let's say it is 70.40, and low high swap points are given as 100, 110 suppose. So it is 3 month swap points, so 3 month swap points is low high is given 100, 110. So this is how you will adjust 1.00, 1.10. Starting from extreme right hand side, we can adjust 2 points, and then 1 point will be adjusted on the left hand side of the decimal. So 3 months forward rupee per dollar in this case is 70.20 and 71.50. This is the answer we will get, 70.20 and 71.50. okay, so this is how we have to do the adjustment. Let's take one more example, guys. Dollar per pound is 1.2120, 1.2140. Let's say swap points are given as 120 and 100. So this time it is 3 month swap points are 120 and 100. How do I do it? 0.0120. This is negative, right? Minus, because high low is given. 0.0120, 0.0100. We will subtract like this. So any adjustment is to be done from extreme right hand side. You see this? I hope guys we are clear with this. Okay, so any adjustment is to be done from extreme right hand side. The adjustment is to be done from extreme right hand side after the decimal point. One exam problem they gave, they did something clever. They gave you 3 month swap points and they gave you 2 month swap points, and they wanted you to calculate a forward rate for 2.5 months. If you remember guys, I told you, just remember two things. Find out the gap between them, and that gap represents for 30 days. You remember that? Between 3 months and 2 month swap points, you can first find out the gap. Find out the gap between 3 month and 2 month swap points. That gap is for 30 days. Find out the proportionate gap for 15 days. Find out the proportionate gap for 15 days. Then take the 2 month swap points and add that 15 days gap. If swap points are given as low high, add. If swap points are given as high low, then subtract. So find out the gap between 3 month and 2 month swap points. That gap is representing 30 days gap. Find out the 15 days equivalent gap. That 15 days I will adjust in 2 month swap points. That will give me 2.5 month swap points. Once you have 2.5 month swap points, then adjustment will be same as I have taught you above. This is how guys you have to do the swap points adjustment. Okay, we have done comprehensive number of sums in the class. Go through them after understanding the concept. After that, we started with the interest rate parity theory. If you remember, we studied two different theories. One is interest rate parity theory and one is triple P theory. The basic idea of using interest rate parity theory is to do the computation of expected forward rate. What is the equation of IRP guys? F by S is equal to 1 plus IA divided by 1 plus IB. Basically, the interest rate parity theory is based on prevention of arbitrage principle, and it gives you one simple conclusion. The country which has a lower interest rate, will have its currency at a forward premium. The country which has lower interest rate will have its currency at a forward premium. The country which has higher interest rate will have its currency at a forward discount. This is the quotation, this is the conclusion given in the theory, and this theory is based on prevention of arbitrage principle. That is, if this does not hold good, then obviously there is an opportunity to make arbitrage profits. Okay, so the equation is given as F by S is equal to 1 plus IA divided by 1 plus IB, where IA represents the price currency and IB represents the base currency. Never forget that. IA represents the price currency, IB represents the base currency. Now I told you two important things here. I told you that if it is a 3 months forward rate, then when you use this equation, then you have to take it as 1 plus T into IA divided by 1 plus T into IB. Because if my forward rate is for 3 months, then my interest rates which are given on per annum basis, should also be converted into 3 months equivalent. That is why we do it as S into 1 plus T into IA divided by 1 plus T into IB. That is the time adjustment of interest rate we need to do. What if they give you continuous compounded rates? You remember, continuous compounded rates are a situation where interest rates are changing on a continuous basis, and in such cases what we do is, we instead of writing 1 plus I, we start using e to the power I, and the value for this e to the power I will be given in exam. So in that case the equation is F is equal to S into e to the power IA minus IB into T. This is the equation we use in case of continuous compounding for IRP. F is equal to S into e to the power IA minus IB into T, where IA represents the price currency, IB represents the base currency, and T represents the time adjustment which will be done based on the maturity of a forward contract. This is the discussion guys we have done. Now after that, if you remember, I told you one very important point, that how do you see the application of IRP coming in? Yes, if you're lucky, you might get a sum on this itself, that is the equation application. But the most important part where you will see the application is, they will tell you that you need to hedge using a forward cover, but they will not give you the forward rate. But what they do is, they give you the interest rates of the two countries. Now remember one thing, I'm speaking a statement, register it in your brain, and I've told this so many times in the class also. if interest rate data of two countries is available, if interest rate data of two countries is available, and they want the forward rate, you want the forward rate for the purpose of hedging, then in that case please remember forward rate needs to be computed using IRP equation. If interest rate data of two countries is available and forward rate is missing in the sum, and you need forward rate for moving ahead with the sum, please use the IRP equation to calculate your forward rate. Will the question specify this? Answer is no. They expect students to know this application of IRP. That is the challenging part. They expect students to know this application of IRP. Okay, done. Next, what we said in the country which has lower interest rate will have its currency at a forward premium. What if this does not hold good? If this does not hold good, then there is an arbitrage opportunity, and we refer to that arbitrage as covered interest arbitrage. We refer to that arbitrage as covered interest arbitrage opportunity. Covered interest arbitrage opportunity. How do we do this? Before we start with the process has 4 steps, guys, but before we start with the process, what we do is we just write down the equation and we solve for the interest rate of either India or US. Assuming two countries involved are India and US, we calculate the interest rate of any one country. Suppose I calculate the interest rate of dollar. As per IRP, the justified interest rate is 4%. As per IRP, 4% should be the interest rate in US, but suppose the actual interest rate in US is only 3%. You think interest rate in US should be 4%, but the actual interest rate in US is only 3%. If that is the case, it means interest rates in US are understated. Interest rates in US are understated. They are less than what it should be. So obviously what will happen, guys, in that case, you will borrow in US because US is offering money at a lower rate. You think it should be 4%, but it is only 3%. So you should be borrowing in US. That becomes a step 1 in the process. So before you start the process, you will put the numbers as given in the sum, and any one country interest rate you will calculate as per IRP, and then make comparison of that interest rate with the actual rate to decide if the interest rate is understated or overstated in that country, and then decide to borrow in the country where interest rate is understated. In this case, interest rate is understated in US. So what you do is you borrow in US and you calculate the amount payable, that is your borrowing plus interest. You calculate the amount. Step 2, sell dollar, convert into rupee. Invest rupee in India. That's a step 3. Invest rupee in India. And step 4 is take a forward cover to convert back into dollars. You take a forward cover today itself to convert back into dollars. So guys, you know what happens in that case is that today you have taken a forward cover, and suppose here you get $105, and in step 1 you have $103 payable. So you know you only have $103 payable, but what you are getting today is $105. So obviously in that case you are making an arbitrage profit of $2. This is how the approach is, guys. Okay, apart from that, one more type of sums we have done on IRP, and that is where you have to do NPV analysis of a project. If you remember, in NPV analysis of a project, guys, you need to remember this, that there are 2 types of approach which can be used. One is a foreign currency approach, one is a home currency approach. When you do this foreign currency approach and home currency approach, there will be application of RE, that is required rate of return application will come. And if you remember, I told you RE is basically made up of 3 things: risk-free real rate, inflation premium, and risk premium. I hope, guys, you remember this. Don't disappoint me. You remember all this, right? RE is the required rate of return of the investor, which is generally used as a discounting rate while doing the NPV related sums. And this RE is basically calculated as per CAPM. If they don't give you RE as per CAPM, then this is also one of the methods of calculating RE. RE is made up of 3 components. One is risk-free real rate, then we have inflation premium, and then we have risk premium. Once we take risk-free real rate and inflation premium, the rate becomes nominal rate. Risk-free nominal rate, and once we adjust risk premium also, it becomes risk adjusted nominal rate. You remember that risk premium is basically what is the probability of default. More the probability of default, more will be the risk premium. Like if I have to give my money to Vijay Mallya, probably I will be looking for 100% risk premium, because chances are high that even 100% won't be justified, because he is not going to give back your money to you, right? So RE is made up of 3 things: risk-free real rate, inflation premium, and finally we have risk premium. Risk-free real rate plus inflation premium is nominal rate. Once we adjust risk premium, we get the risk adjusted nominal rate. Now what happens is, coming back to IRP application, we have basically the two types of approach. When we are calculating NPV, we will have two types of approach. One is home currency approach, one is foreign currency approach. Home currency approach means you will convert all your dollar cash flows into rupee equivalent. But the problem in this case you will face is they will not give you the exchange rates at which conversion should be done. So what you do is you calculate those exchange rates using IRP. Exchange rates will be calculated as per IRP by using this above equation. And once you do that, then you convert all your dollar cash flows into rupee equivalent cash flows. After that, once you convert your dollar cash flows into rupee equivalent cash flows, then you normally calculate the NPV. What is NPV? NPV is present value of cash inflows minus present value of cash outflows. Another is the foreign currency approach. In foreign currency approach, you know, the problem will be that RE in dollar terms will not be given to you. RE in dollar terms will not be given to you. Then what you do is but RF will be given to you in dollar terms. So what you do is you use this knowledge of required rate of return. You use this knowledge, and from that you use the Indian rates. Indian rates are used to calculate the risk premium. Then that risk premium is used and with the RF of US to calculate the required rate of return in US. Okay, suppose RE in India is 18%, RF in India is 8%. This is India, guys. US RF is 4%. Now what I'm telling you, that I'm explaining you, RE in US is missing, not given. But I'm doing the foreign currency approach. Foreign currency approach means this is the discount rate. So first what you do is from Indian rates, suppose this comes to 10%. Suppose, okay, don't go on to solve this. Suppose in India, if from the required rate of return I remove the risk-free nominal rate, required rate of return minus risk-free nominal rate, I'll get the risk premium. This is my risk premium. This risk premium, guys, this risk premium, if I incorporate in the risk-free rate of US, I can get RE. Then what is RE in US? 1.04 into 1.10 minus 1. This will give me 14% approximately. This is the process you have to follow in case of foreign currency approach. I hope, guys, we are fine with this. Okay. Now, after this, the next important theory that we studied was triple P. Now, if you remember, I told you that if you know IRP, then triple P becomes very easy. What is one bottom line of triple P? What is the main crux of triple P? Triple P says that if the country has higher inflation, inflation means the prices are going up. But one other way of looking at inflation is that a high inflation means that money value is going down. So the country which has higher inflation will see its currency at a forward discount in the currency market. A currency which has higher inflation will see its currency at a forward discount in the currency market. That is, suppose if inflation in India is 4%, in India is 10%, and in US the inflation is 4%, then in the currency market we expect rupee will be at a forward discount against dollar approximately by 6%. 10 minus 4 equal to 6%. In other words, dollar will be at a forward premium of 6%. How is the equation written? F by S is equal to 1 plus T into RA divided by 1 plus T into RB. This is how we write the equation. 1 plus T into RA divided by 1 plus T into RE. And obviously F is equal to S into e to the power RA minus RB into T. This also can be written F is equal to S into e to the power RA minus RB into T. This is in case of continuous compounding. So this equation, again, very, very important, guys. If inflation data of two countries is given to you, and the forward rate is missing, but you understand, looking at the nature of the sum, that you need the forward rate for going ahead, then forward rate can be calculated by using triple P. Once again, guys, remember very clearly, they will not probably specify the usage of triple P, but as a student you got to be smart. The moment you see that inflation data is given in the sum and forward rate is missing, make use of the triple P equation to calculate the forward rate. You remember that sum we did, the South African rands and Indian entity had negative cash flows. That sum is, guys, very, very important. Do it properly. Okay, so this is the discussion on triple P, guys. After that, we have done a concept of leading versus lagging. That was one small concept on leading versus lagging. Leading versus lagging was very simple. I told you the questions generally come from payable perspective. Leading is that you pay the money today itself without any credit period. No credit period is used in this case, and in this case lagging means you pay it on a future date, that is credit period will be used by the company. Advantages of leading is that if you pay today itself, you might get some discount from the supplier, and in this case you are not exposed to currency fluctuation risk. So obviously, but for making quick payment you might have to borrow from the bank. So these are the different things you need to consider in case of leading. Lagging, in case of lagging, what happens is that you will pay on the future date. Maybe supplier can ask you some extra interest for making payment after the due date, I mean after some certain period of time, and in this case you are exposed to currency fluctuation risk. So obviously in this case you will be taking a forward cover. Which is a better strategy for hedging? Answer is that we don't want to comment on this. There is as such there is no such thing as better strategy. Whichever alternative results in least outflow on maturity or highest inflow on maturity, that strategy is preferred. Whichever alternative results in least outflow on maturity in home currency terms or highest inflow on maturity in home currency terms, that strategy is preferred by us. I hope guys this is clear to you. Okay, after that we studied something called as centralized versus decentralized, centralized versus decentralized cash management system. I hope you remember this also. Centralized versus decentralized cash management system is where we try to evaluate whether the parent company should keep control of all its surplus funds, or the entities like the subsidiaries or the branches, they should be allowed to make their own investments or borrowings. So centralized is where the company has a cash management center which is in the location of the parent company. So centralized cash management means all the surplus or deficit will be taken away by the parent company, and parent company will take the final investment or borrowing decisions. So if Japan and US have surplus, they will send the surplus to the parent company in India, and suppose if UK subsidiary has a deficit, then Indian company will sponsor the deficit of the UK subsidiary. But if it is a decentralized cash management system, then each company will get to decide how they want to borrow or invest in their local currency independently. Then they don't have to send their money immediately to the parent company. But when they ask you to compare between centralized and decentralized cash management, then in that case we will have to compare both the alternatives and choose that particular alternative which results in highest home currency inflow on maturity. Consolidated cash flows on maturity should be evaluated in terms of home currency, and accordingly decision should be taken. Consolidated cash balances should be seen in parent company's home currency to decide whether company should go for centralized. Centralized means one point control of all the money. Decentralized means everybody gets to keep control of their money. Centralized means one point control. Decentralized means everybody have their respective control. So this is centralized versus decentralized cash management. Not a very important topic, but we never know, this may be tested in exam. Okay, we will stop with video number 2 now. I will have to make one more video on Forex, the revision part, and in that I'll tell you what our focus is going to be, the types of foreign currency accounts. That is one point of discussion we have to do. That is what I feel we are left with. Then the next will be types of currency fluctuation risk, that is the transaction exposure or the economic exposure, and I have to give you some idea about economic exposure. Next, I told you in Forex they can ask you some NPV related sums. So NPV I will do a quick revision of, even though you're in new syllabus, and NPV, I mean the capital budgeting is not part of your curriculum, but I told you guys many a times NPV they can test you. And then the final part of our discussion, I think these are the things I am left with, and then the final part is forward cover, cancellation, extension, and early delivery. These are the 3 things. I'll just give a quick revision. So these are the 4 things I need to do. So I would be making one more video on this. Stay tuned guys, and last video got a superb response. Thanks a lot for all your compliments. It means a lot to me. It does the wonders of good to me. So please, if you are watching this video and if you find it useful, leave a thumbs up. That means a lot to me. And please write something in the comments about how you found the video to be. Was it useful? That is what is encouraging me to make more videos. Okay, so please understand, you need to write something good, only then I'm going to make next video. Jokes apart, nothing like that guys. There are no terms and conditions when you are with KP. No terms and conditions at all. I hope you enjoyed the video guys. I hope this is good for recalling all your concepts, and we will be making more videos like this so that you are able to brush up all your concepts in least amount of time. And I'm going to put all these videos on YouTube, so rest assured there is no worries on how many times you can watch these videos and all. Just first do my class notes properly a couple of times and then see these videos. They will do wonders to you. Okay, till we meet again guys. Thank you, bye bye, God bless, cheers.